I want to talk a little bit about what has happened since I started playing trumpet again in 2011. So now this is almost 12 years ago. What I started to find out going between the instruments. I made slow but steady progress on the trumpet once I made this decision in the fall of 2011 that I was going to practice every day and all that. Of course, the schedule would always be working around what other gigs and commitments I had and things like that. Well, at that point, I was 60. The days of practicing 4 to 10 hours a day, they were long gone. I mean, it was nothing ever approaching anywhere near that. And now, as I got older, those of us that play a lot or have played a lot know the physical effects that the instrument has on you, especially as you age. And one of the things is even just holding the instrument, however you grip it, whatever your grip is. There's all different kinds of ways to do it. In the end, you're pretty much in a fixed position. Now a trumpet is a little more symmetric. You're almost, I mean, okay, so this hand's a little higher than this one, but you're kind of symmetric this way. On a trombone, it is not symmetric at all. Your body is all twisted around like this, and then, and if you uh, all that stress is compounded if you play hard, which is what I did. Like I said before, I was not really so much a finesse player, and plus the different situations I got into, like playing with salsa bands and things like that. It was all about blowing, and of course, I mean that was fine with me. That's what I like to do. And like I had said before, also, I took a kind of an athletic approach to playing, but still, just like being an athlete or doing anything, repetitive on your body over, decades of time, it takes its toll. You start getting arthritis and things like that in your hands. So I'm just going to hit some points just all in no, in just random order here. So one of the things I started to realize was this on this aspect of wear and tear. By changing instruments, you didn't have to be stuck in the same position all the time. When you're just playing one instrument, like friends of mine that are reed players talk about like being a flute player, where you just got to hold everything in the same position, and look how contorted that is. There's nothing symmetric about this, you know, and all the instruments are like that. So at least now, going between a trumpet and a trombone and baritone horn and all that, you have to hold those instruments all different ways. I think that helps to sort of spread the stress around, because over the years it's taken its toll on like my neck and shoulders and think back. And that's another thing. I mean, I certainly used to like to stand up and play a lot, especially to get more power. I mean, I could stand up and play a solo now, but like being in a band where you're going to stand up for the whole gig and pound away, I can't do it anymore. I got disc problems, from an injury, decades ago. And so if I'm going to stand up and just pound away, I can't do it anymore. I have to sit down, at least be on a stool or something like that. Okay, that's fine. I mean, I'm 73 years old. I'm lucky that I can play anything at all. So if I have to make a concession like that, I think nothing of it. This is one thing that, like playing the trumpet, first of all, I found that of the two instruments, they help each other. Playing one helps the other. So that's kind of a nice fringe benefit out of this, is because, let's say, my trombone schedule, maybe I have a rehearsal or something, maybe no gig, no kind of a commitment for a week or something. I can spend that whole week on the trumpet, and then pick up the trombone and be fine. And not only that, the playing the trumpet has helped to get me better centered on the trombone. And one thing I found out this is back to like holding the instrument. I had gotten into some bad habits on trombone all those years, holding the instrument. Uh, like, when you're holding the instrument for hours and hours, first of all, uh, with this, head straight, horn straight thing, Roy Stevens again, I hold my horn straight out like this more than a lot of trombone players. Of course, uh, there's all kinds of collisions with music stands and stand lights and saxophone players and everything else holding the horn up like this. But uh, that's the way my chops work, and that's what I have to do. Uh, but to the point, I don't have really long arms, so I almost don't even have a seventh position anymore. I'm all the way out, and but way I'm holding the trombone like this. By the time I get to here, that's only sixth position. I mean, that's about as far as I can go. And I look, and I got like another full position before I get to seventh. So, of course, this is nothing new either. I knew that I had problems getting to seventh position, a long time ago. So what I would do, I I would cheat. I was kind of, as I go out, I start bringing the slide and the bell. I mean, I could turn my head and stay with it, but still, I had to kind of make this adjustment to get the seventh position. Another thing I did was I would kind of have my elbows down on my chest, to almost like to have a tripod to try to, take up some of the weight of the trombone. So, and I played that way for a long time. Well, when I started playing the trumpet, like this whole thing of bringing the slide, to go out to sixth and seventh position without me knowing it sort of worked its way into my embouchure too. So that when I was playing trumpet again, there was sort of there was some kind of a twisting thing going on uh, that I didn't seem to have on trombone noticeably. But I couldn't quite figure. In other words, the magic spot that you're looking for the mouthpiece to land, it was always kind of like a little bit off. I couldn't quite figure out what it was. It was something that I would sort of feel going on in my chops, and plus, this also created some accuracy and problems with consistency and all that. So it took a few years, 7 years in, or 8 years in other words, maybe like 4 years ago, I was started to make this connection that, like when I would go into the lower register, get to the end of the slide like that. Well, that was sort of built into my chops. And when I would without even realizing it, I had some kind of that same twist would kind of carry over into me trying to play trumpet. But the margin for error with the trumpet, of course, is much less, with a smaller mouthpiece and everything than it is on trombone. So there were some things like that, like I said, these are sort of like bad habits that I got into on trombone that I didn't really realize until I started trying to do the same stuff on the trumpet, and I'm trying to figure what am I feeling in here? What's going on? And I was finally able to figure that out, a few years ago now. And so where it came into play on the trumpet, this is back to Roy Stevens stuff now. Back to the fixed jaw position and your teeth being even and all that. Okay, Reinhardt has this thing in his theories of like pivoting. with like sort of changing the angle of your horn a little bit and all that. Okay, Roy Stevens, he doesn't buy that. He didn't buy that one at all. It was a whole different, like almost the opposite. You're aiming for no pivot at all. What he would talk about is the weight. I mean, you're not actually going to move the horn, but the weight coming in and out like straight, lined up, perpendicular to the base of your teeth forming under the mouthpiece. So it's like everything's all like right angles, parallel and right angles. So naturally, this thing of pulling the slide over on the trombone destroyed that whole idea without me knowing it. Like I said, I got away with it on the trombone, but that's the same thing carried over on the trumpet. It just didn't work. So what had to happen is I end up changing my grip on trombone. I had to do it because of I got some padding on here, this holding this bar here and all that. I guess it's arthritis or something like that. I mean, I got some joint stiffness in here. Like most trombone players, the traditional way of holding the trombone is, you got this one finger up here and maybe a finger under here or whatever. A couple of years ago, I just had to stop doing that. I couldn't do it anymore. So I had to switch it, and I try to get some padding on here, and I just kind of grip it like this. I don't bring that finger up here anymore. I don't know what all you can see up here. I don't turn around this way. I don't do that anymore. I grab it this way. So, and what I found was I'm trying to make these changes in order to make the trumpet better, but it sort of turns back around and it makes the trombone better too. Because, like I said, this was a bad habit that I was doing on trombone, and maybe I was getting away with it, but I didn't realize it. But maybe I suffered a little bit in terms of accuracy and cleaner attacks and stuff like that. So now holding with this other kind of grip now with my left hand, I make sure that when I'm going out on the slide, I'm trying to stay completely straight. In other words, I'm trying to duplicate this angle here. I'm trying to replicate it here on trombone, and that means you got to make sure that you work the slide like straight out rather than pulling off or pulling down or something like that. This is so asymmetrical, it's ridiculous, because you're trying to do this, but you got this this piece of tubing here like right on the side of your neck, and it's almost makes it impossible to come around in this direction, especially if you got a fat neck, which I kind of did, so anyway, but once, like what I said, so so playing the trumpet kind of helped me, carry that over to the trombone. I wanted to approach it like it's the same instrument. It's all just one instrument. During the pandemic, there were some Zoom meetings among some trombone players. This guy, Kevin McManus, in the Pittsburgh area, was organizing these trombone Zooms every week. And it lasted, I think over a year. So there were a lot of big name trombone players that would be on the Zoom sometimes. And so the great Tom Bones Malone was on some of those Zoom meetings, and he talked about all the instruments that he played: trumpet, bone, saxophones, flutes, and whatever else he played. He even showed his instrument setup on the Letterman show. He had 13 instruments, and it was all clustered together and everything. So he's saying, like people would ask him, how's he play all those instruments? And his answer to them is, oh, it's all just one instrument. So I thought, well, if he can think that about all that, then it's no big deal. Me just going between trumpet and trombone. And I mean, and there are some people that pull it off. You know, always kind of piss me off that I couldn't do it. Here's another point along those lines. You know, obviously, like I feel like you don't need to get married to any mouthpiece. I mean, you can have your preference and all that. This trumpet is a Bob Reeves, was it? I think it's a 41S. Somebody gave me. And on trombone here, I got this Buddy Morrow jet tone, but like I had said before, you know, in different situations, I switch the mouthpiece. You know, what's the big deal about switching mouthpieces if you're going to switch instruments that are you know this far apart? So that was my approach from the beginning, and also I was going to practice that way, and I knew that if I wanted it to be that way, meaning that you know maybe if I was in a situation where I'm playing both instruments, you know, on the same gig or in the same band or something like that, or even practicing, that it would just be no big deal to go from one instrument to the other. So how do you prepare for that? Well, the way I looked at it, you just do it. You know, that's the way you operate and that's the way you think of it. For example, one thing that I do is, let's say I go to some rehearsal on trombone. I have a little old junk cornet. I'll throw that in the front seat of my Jeep, and then when the rehearsal is done, after a couple hours, I'll come out to the car and get right in the car. And the first thing I might try to do is just pick up that cornet a little bit and play. You know, the whole idea being, like I said, you know, making fast switches. And of course, that calls to mind some of the stuff that Maynard used to do when, especially in his younger days, where you know he might be playing a solo on valve bone or French horn, and plus, you know, he could even play saxophone and all that. Like you might see him do that on a gig, play a soprano or something like that, and then put the instrument down and immediately pick up the trumpet. Of course, you know, in his earlier days, you know, he'll blow real hard on the valve bone and just barely have enough time to put that down and grab, you know, the trumpet and come in and nail a double A or something like that. And of course, you know, that is kind of superhuman, but nobody says that someone like myself can at least practice that way. You know, man, maybe I can't do it on the gig like that, but I can certainly practice it that way. And plus then there are players that can do it. So that, like I said, it used to kind of tick me off that I couldn't do it. But so anyway, that's how I approach the two instruments. I talked about changing the grip on the trombone. I also had to do the same thing on trumpet. Once again, to get back into this thing of your weight coming in and out. I was still carrying, when I first picked up the trumpet, I was still carrying over that thing of having my arms down on my chest. That was all contributing to some of this twisting and things not being quite lined up on my chops. So I had to kind of break some of those habits. And then there were different things that I changed in my grip. I got something going on in my thumb here now anyway. It's like there's not as much range of motion, you know, as the other hand, but I hold it kind of like a pistol grip for now, you know. So that works pretty good. The more repetitive things that you do like that, who knows what kind of compensation you're going to have to make in the future.